Fernando Perdomo, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So what's going on? How you doing?
Everything's great. It's been a lovely Wednesday here in Los Angeles. I had a rehearsal for a show that I'm playing on Friday with a singer-songwriter named Sam Babayan from Armenia at the Troubadour, the world-famous Troubadour in LA. I've been working with Sam now since 2012, and he had a band called The Dirty Diamond, but now it's calling it Sam Babayan and the Dirty Diamond. And we have a new single that I produced, co-produced called Sea of Stars that came out last week. And we're doing a big show to celebrate that single at the Troubadour, which is my favorite club in the world. I mean, I love playing there.
Very cool. Usually I do a little bit of prep before these interviews and like kind of look through an artist's discography and kind of plot out what I want to ask about. And I try I tried doing that for you. And you've got to be the
Impossible.
busiest man in the music business.
Impossible. And you know what? That's mostly my fault. I actually have an answer for the meaning of life, and it's to have the least amount of regrets on your deathbed. And my situation is I put out a lot of music because I don't want to ever be in a position where I'm sitting around waiting to die going, I didn't do enough because there's too many Nick Drakes and Jeff Buckleys in the world that make me sad that we didn't get enough. So I want to definitely fill the world with music because I'm inspired. I live in a recording studio. I actually live here in my studio called Forward Motion Studios in Sherman Oaks, California. And every day I'm making music for myself, for clients. I've got a Patreon that's been going now since 2020 where I release a song a week. And now I've kind of patterned my entire career around it, releasing an album a month with this Wave series, which is at six right now, halfway point. But I just love my life, man, because I do so many different things. And uh, most of what I do is paid, and the stuff that isn't paid pays its weight in gold and inspiration because I have a lot of clients that rely on me to help them make their music, and the joy I see on their faces when they hear their music done the right way is truly inspiring to me.
So yeah, I want to ask you about your music and the Waves records that you're putting out, but I'm interested in your studio and like the clients you work with and what a session with you is like, and because I know you play basically everything and
Yeah,
can play everything. Are you usually covering a lot of instruments during your
yes, I
sessions,
am.
or yeah?
I love collaborating with other musicians, but a lot of what I do actually is being a one-stop shop as far as instrumentation is concerned. Um, my biggest influence in life is Todd Rundgren, and I was also still am a massive Beatles fan, and McCartney One was a big influence on that. But I really got into one-man band albums. Todd Rundgren's Something Anything and Herman of Minkalo, Emmett Rhodes' first record. But one of the things that drove me to LA is I'm a massive fan of the band Jellyfish. And there are some side projects and solo projects of that band that are one-man bands, especially Jason Faulkner, who is an amazing one-man band artist who puts out incredible albums on his own. John Bryan, who played on Spilt Milk, they had a band called The Grays, and it was pretty interesting because two out of four members are multi-instrumentalists in that band, and John Bryan is one of the kings of playing everything. And basically, I came out to LA with those guys as career templates because I know how much they work, and I know how much they are valuable to the people that they play with, and I kind of patented myself after that because it all started with a Tascam 424 four-track I got for Christmas when I was 11, 12 years old. And then I really got into multi-tracking and overdubbing myself. And at this point, I've made close to 50 albums where I'm playing all the instruments, and I absolutely love it. I've always loved playing the drums. I've always loved playing the bass and the guitar. I consider myself a production style keyboardist. I'm really good at like Hammond B3, Wurlitzer, Mellotron, synthesizers. Not necessarily, I don't necessarily consider myself a concert pianist or anything like that.
Right.
But that's the beautiful thing about this is that um, I also, have a lot of musicians that I love calling in for specialty stuff. But a lot of people I work with, they really can't afford to pay multiple musicians. So I provide a good service for them because for my hourly and daily fee, I could pretty much um, be the one man band that they need. So a lot of the times I'm working with artists, it's one on one. Sometimes it's me, the artist, and a drummer, or me, the artist, and other band members, or other people that they want to bring in. And then I've got string players and horn players I absolutely love, and specialty instruments. LA is not a very, LA is actually very cool with that. There's a lot of multi-instrumentalists that do what I do, and they're incredible. I mean, I absolutely love them, and it's so cool to see them switch. Like I go to a place called Cantor's. It's a Jewish deli on Tuesdays, and it's great to see guys that just played the drums get behind the guitar and absolutely slay.
Cool.
It's really cool. It's a lot of fun, and I always love that aspect of it because any fan of Paul McCartney knows that he's an amazing guitar player, amazing pianist, great drummer. He played on some of the best Beatles songs. You
Yeah.
know, best the guitar solo on Taxman, the drums on Dear Prudence. It's amazing.
Are you your own engineer too then?
Yeah, engineering has always been something that I've been into. I actually luckily went to a high school that had a recording studio program, and I learned a lot of engineering through that, through Doug Burris, who was my teacher at Miami Beach Senior High School, where we also had a rock ensemble where I kind of started playing in a cover band when I was 14, and we did Sergeant Pepper's as a show for my junior year. And it was amazing. And I've been working out of recording studios since I was in Miami. I'm from Miami, Florida originally. So I did some work at Criteria Recording Studios. I did some work at Middle Ear, which was the Bee Gees studio, and I did a lot of work at Gloria Stefan's Crescent Moon Studios. So
Oh,
I come from a very professional background. I've been using Pro Tools since 2001. I found a picture of me using my first Pro Tools rig and the big CRT monitor, and I had a compact computer and a compact keyboard, and it's just like, man. I
cool.
hate to I hate to feel like that guy at 44, but we've come a long way in recording. But I was recording at home, back in 1999, 2000, and also working in studios. And I've been lucky enough to have produced sessions at Abbey Road in London, and Ocean Way Studios here in LA, and Capitol Studios here in LA, and Arden Studios in Memphis. And I still am a huge fan of the traditional large studio and large consoles and tape machines and all that fun stuff. But it's pretty great that I could roll out of bed and start making music, make myself some coffee, and start making music at 7 in the morning because that's what I love to do. And luckily I've been fortunate enough that I've had a multiple studios in LA that I've been able to do this in. And the current studio I'm at, I've been now here for 2 years, and it was built by a guy named Craig Mirajanian, who I discovered through his album called Perfect Fit that came out in 1980. That has Tony Kaye of Yes on it, and
Oh, nice.
Leland Sklar, and a bunch of different people. And he was on Warner, and he was later an engineer for guys like David Foster, and he built the studio in the 80s and 90s, and it was not really being used while he went into a new career of being a drug counselor. So he was very happy that I took it over, brought it back to life, and he's amazed by the amount of music that comes out of here and the different people that come through. And I kind of like the variety of being a producer because, I know guys that just work on their own music, and that's perfectly fine. But in a given week, I'm working with everything from a singer-songwriter from Scotland to a actor who's an amazing songwriter to working with people remotely on different projects, and guys like Carmine Appice, who I made a couple records with. I'm actually working on a project with him right now with a spoken word guy, which is really, really cool. And then this is great. I tour with Marshall Crenshaw, very cult Americana rockabilly power pop guy, And he would hate that I call it power pop, but it's just great songwriting. And a guy that saw me play with him in Wisconsin contacted me because he had found a tape of recordings of a friend of his who had passed away back in the 90s. And he wanted to see if I could use those recordings and make them professional. And it's amazing now with AI, you could stem split. And I was able to do the Beatles now and then thing and grab
That's
his
cool.
vocals and grab the stuff that's great and replace all the stuff that was programmed of the time. And he wrote me back and he says that, that he feels like he's alive again. This guy he hasn't seen in a long time, that it's happening, and it's really my joy. Um, that pays more than any dollar could ever pay me is knowing that I'm making a difference in people's lives and helping with legacies because um I actually was lucky enough to work with a few artists on reviving their careers. One of them was Linda Perhacs, who was a psychedelic artist who put out an album called Parallelograms in 1970 and then left the business. And we made two more albums in 2013 and 15 that did really well. And I worked with Emmett Rhodes on his fourth and final album, Rainbow Ends. I played bass on it. My friend Chris produced it. And I also worked with Dean Ford at the Marmalade on his final recording project, original recording project, before he passed away. And I love working with older artists. I love working with artists of every generation. I've got teen clients, and I've got artists in their 70s and 80s. So
Yeah, so
I love it.
you're just you're a few years older than me, but yeah, how did you get into the music that you're into? Because for me, it was my dad's record collection. I don't know if you had a similar experience or.
Well, my mom was very musical. My dad wasn't, but my mom was a Cuban immigrant, so not necessarily very rock and roll, even though she did have a tape of the Beatles blue double disc that fascinated me. And my old brother is 16 years older, and he had a lot of records, but it was mostly disco and stuff like that, and promos and stuff. But I really discovered rock and roll from three things: MTV, because my family had cable; the radio, which Miami had a really fantastic classic rock station called Zeta 4, later 1059, Big 106, and I was always listening to that station. And then also, my family used to go to the flea market all the time. My mom would hand me like $5 every Sunday for toys, and after a while, I realized that for $5, I could take home five records every Sunday, and sometimes 10. It's funny how things haven't changed. This dollar record is such a classic concept to me. But I that's how I amassed over 1,000 records by the time I was in high school. And I was buying anything that looked cool, anything that said Mellotron, 12-string guitar, Moog synthesizer. And that's how I discovered prog rock, actually. I'll never forget buying that copy of the Yes album and being absolutely blown away by it, and also getting into Curved Air, second album. The Who actually was a good stair step between the Beatles and prog because I really got into Tommy. And I think a life-changing thing. Here's actually number four. My brother was a tech head. He still is a tech head. He works for the government. He's a computer programmer, but he loved using two VHS machines to copy from one tape to another.
uh,
And we would rent videos from Blockbuster, music videos, and
okay.
copy them from one to another. And that's how I saw Pink Floyd live at Pompeii, Pink Floyd Delicate Sound of Thunder, An Evening with Utopia, which is a life changer for me. Um, Woodstock, and the one that killed me was Kids Are All Right by The Who. Absolutely love that stuff. And again, it was just a big influence on me. But yeah, I wasn't like any of the other kids in high school. Um, my bio used to say I was the kid in the Abbey Road shirt that used to get picked on by kids in New Kids on the Block t-shirts. But really, I was always my own self. When I was in high school, I was really into Neil Young, especially because of the Decade album that I had picked up. And I also picked up the Decade Guitar Songbook. And I also had the Crosby, Stills, and Nash songbook with Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Deja Vu on it. And man, I mean, that was a big life changer for me. And the segue is that when I first moved to LA from Miami, I was playing at Cantor's, the deli I was telling you about. And a guy came in and told me I need to play on a record that he was producing. And it turned out to be Andy Slater, and he was producing a record called Echo in the Canyon, which is a tribute to Laurel Canyon music from 1964 to 66, Buffalo Springfield, the Beach Boys, Mamas and Papas, the Birds, Love. And it's all the music that I was listening to when I was 12 to 15. And one of the things that got me the gig is that I didn't need charts. I knew all the songs already. I knew You
Uh,
Told Me by the Turtles. I knew Questions. I knew Bells of Rimney. I knew all the stuff. And it ended up becoming a movie called Echo in the Canyon, where I got to work with everybody from Fiona Apple to Beck to Brian Wilson to Stephen Stills, and David Crosby's in the movie, and Ringo Starr's in the movie. I met him at the premiere. And that was really a life-changing moment because it really kind of solidified my journey as this weirdo that got picked on in school. But really, I was building a skill,
yeah.
which is I have encyclopedic knowledge of rock and roll, but I also am in touch with modern stuff. But really, to me, my best guitar teacher was learning stuff off of records and listening to records and going, that sounds good. That doesn't sound good, but this is the type of stuff that I dig. And then that kind of led to my production style, which is one foot in the vintage and one foot in the modern, you know. But I love production. I mean, I still I still get intense chills listening to records produced by Alan Parsons and 10cc and Todd Rundgren and Glenn Johns and Phil Ramone, all the great producers. And I love reading books about them too, because I like to see what their career arc was, see what they did when they needed help and when they were hustling and when they needed to build their careers again after, the record business fell apart. But here I am working in this crazy business and figuring out new ways of making music and selling it.
I don't know if you know that I'm a huge Todd fan as well or
Fantastic.
not, but do you have like a specific memory of discovering Todd? You mentioned the Live
Well,
Utopia VHS, but
the VHS of Evening with Utopia, but my first concert ever, Todd was in it. It was Ringo and the All Stars,
oh yeah, I saw that tour.
1991, 92 tour, and it was Todd, Dave Edmunds, Nils Lofgren, Timothy B. Schmidt, Joe Walsh, Burton Cummings, Zach Starkey, and the sax player from the Lost Boys,
Yeah,
and
I saw that tour and I
Timmy
had that
Capello.
VHS. Yeah.
Oh man, and that was a life-changing moment because Todd stole the show. He was amazing. I mean, I remember he did Black Mariah and he just shredded on the guitar, which I loved. And then he also did Bang on the Drum All Day, which, the crowd went nuts. I mean, that song is proof that, there's no such thing as a stupid song. I mean, there is something to making something at a fifth grade level that just the whole world could dance to. And it was an amazing show. I mean, come on, I can't I can't think of a better show for a young classic rock fan to go to. It's like a buffet. It's
Yeah.
like a multinational buffet. But then I really got into Todd when I discovered Something Anything, Hermit of Hollow, and then my brain exploded when I first heard Utopia's first album, The Eye on It.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I listened to that record at a record store in Miami, and I couldn't stop jumping up and down. It was so exciting. And it is one of the most exciting records I've ever heard. I mean, the excitement level every time that Kevin Elman hit the concert toms on that Utopia theme, and just the sheer volume of melodic information of the icon. And still to this day, Freak Parade is one of my favorite bass lines of all time. I love playing that. That's a perfect example of who I am as a bass player because um, I love prog rock, but I also love funky James Jamerson, flat wound, And the guy that I idolized the most on bass, aside from McCartney, is Jim Fielder, who was the bass player in Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Okay,
He
yeah.
was actually in Buffalo Springfield for a hot minute while Palmer was deported. And he's just one of the most unsung bass heroes of the world. And any of those bass lines in the Blood, Sweat, and Tears records, that's next level to me.
You pretty much always play flat wounds then?
Yeah, you know what? Generally, I'm cutting on a 67 Hofner. Actually, I was told recently that it could be a 65, and I love that. I also have I had rehearsal today, so it's in my gig bag, but I have a 81 Precision, and I also have flats on. Well, this used to be my main prog bass, which is a 78 Rickenbacker. But when I did the Ram On project with Denny Sywell, I decided to turn this into a Paul bass. So there's the Red Rose Speedway sticker,
Nice.
flat wounds, and this was the bass that I used on that project. And then I had the Goya Rickenbacker copy that has the round wounds on it for the Chris Squire, Geddy Lee type vibe.
Cool.
But generally. I like old sounds. I like old equipment. With Marshall Crenshaw, I've been playing a Mosrite, which is really not something that I've never been on my radar because I love surf, but I've never been a surf freak. But a fan of mine uh, who saw me play on the Blue cruise mentioned that if I'm ever in Nashville, I should come check out his Mosrite collection and pick a guitar out. And I couldn't believe it. I went to this guy Mark's house and I tried 70 guitars and I picked out 1965 Ventures, and that's my main guitar that I play with Marshall Crenshaw. And it's a perfect example of modern vintage ah, Bakersfield sound stuff. Sorry, I got a pile of guitars. It's lovely. It's yeah, but this is my Mosrite,
Sweet.
and it's
Would you
got a
have
lot of great wear, and it's just cool.
I
And it's
saw
got the
you with
best.
I saw you with Marshall a couple years ago. Would you have had that then?
I think I was playing my Mustang.
Yeah, that
And
sounds right.
I got this about a year ago. And
Okay.
Fender Mustang is always going to be one of my favorite guitars because of Todd and Jason Faulkner. But also because of Marshall, I really got into Gretsch guitars. So I got this old '63 Firebird that I love.
Cool.
It's called a Jet Firebird. It's kind of the Malcolm Young guitar,
Right.
but it's chambered. That, but I also love weirdo guitars, and like this crazy Czechoslovakian Jolana Superstar, which is kind of like a copy of Carlos Santana's Moonflower guitar. And look at those pickups. That's the future right there, man.
That's cool.
But yeah, there's $100 Facebook Marketplace find. I love independent builders. I love small companies, and I love big companies too. But yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff. This guitar was built by
Whoa.
John Henry Guitars in Pittsburgh, and this
Oh,
is
cool, cool.
yeah, really cool.
That's where I
Again,
am.
Marshall Crenshaw connect. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, when I was last in Pittsburgh, I played over at the City Winery and this was handed to me, and I love it. It's got P90s. It's a big chunk of mahogany and cherry, and
very
it's
cool.
cool. It's just like one of those like wild guitars that I just love. But yeah, I love Pittsburgh. I played Jurgles the time before, and I've got some great friends over there too. So
Cool.
yeah, it's cool. No, I've got a lot of great things. I produced a record now for Rebecca Pigeon. I produced a track for Louise Goffin, who is Carole King's daughter. Her new track called Playbook coming out next week, and we're doing radio now for it. And it's such a cool song. I mean, it's got a great summer, almost Young Rascals vibe, and it's very
Cool.
cool. And Louise is just as talented as her mom and dad. Her dad was, Jerry Goffin, her mom,
Right.
Carole King, and she's just always inspiring. I've got a new record coming out in August. Not August, actually. Now it's looking like October. Yeah, there's a band. I have a band called Broken Sound, which is a bass, six and drums duo, And I just played on the Dave Kersner tribute to Genesis Lamb Lies Down on Broadway called It, and I'm super excited about that record. That
Very
came
cool.
out awesome.
You have a ton of stuff coming out and just released with all the Waves records, and
Yeah, this is
it's a
this
lot.
has
But
been my 2025 so far.
how do you
Um,
balance all of this studio work with gigging and touring and doing other like performing?
well, I'm socially inept, and I not actually I'm not socially inept. I like going out and seeing shows. Um, I I prioritize making music because it's truly what makes me the happiest. And I also love that it's my job. But because it's my job, I do have to work a little extra harder to be able to pay the bills and keep myself afloat, you know. It can be very difficult. I do a lot of hustling, but I luckily have a lot of clients that love bringing me back again and again and again.
Yeah.
Like I'm about to, I'm in the process of making a third record with Fief Mooney, who's an amazing singer-songwriter. I've made, I've made like 7 albums with a band called Life on Mars with Earl Chaos. I produced like 6 records for, no, 9 records for a guy named Brian J. Klein. I'm working on a new album, a fourth record producing Robert Bidney. They always come back because I mean I'm kind of their rock and their business is my rock. But um, what happened with Waves is I had an album, Waves One, that I had done originally with intention of a different label last year, and then when that fell through, I was going to release it on my own, and it had a different cover. And Christmas came along, and I had texted a bunch of people, Merry Christmas, and one of them was my friend Joe Galdo, who used to run South Beach Studios in Miami. He was a drummer who played with Crosby, Stills and Nash, Robert Palmer, and worked with Gloria Estefan. And he sent me this picture of the beach that's behind the house where he's retired in Ormond Beach, Florida. And I said, "That's a perfect album cover for this album I'm putting out called Waves." And he said, "You could have it." And the next day, he sent me 11 more pictures and said, "Are you sure you want to use that one? This one's better. This one's better." And I said, "12 album covers. What if I made 12 albums this year?" So far, we've got Waves 1, Waves 2, Waves 3, Waves 4, Waves 5, Wave 6, the
So are
Rainbow.
you recording these like month to month? You don't have it all completed yet?
Every single, what's really awesome about this? It's like a journal. Every month I spend the first 2 weeks working on the album, and then I spend a couple weeks doing mixing and mastering and album cover layout and stuff like that, and then I just send it off to get printed. And it's like different, there's 3 things I've learned doing this project. Number one, it's really cool to see where I was at musically.
Hmm.
There's different gear involved. I'm learning different stuff, and the more music I release, the less I can repeat myself. So I'm finding myself now um, challenged to make different music to be able to keep it fresh.
Right.
So because a lot of people repeat themselves, the old you know, Court of the Crimson King, Wake of Poseidon, similar album sequence. Now it's like I'm finding myself doing some very bizarre things. Like there's a track on Wave 6, it's a 9/8. There's a track on Wave 6 that's called Bob Dylan's 115th Tweet, which is a little bit of a joke because Marshall Crenshaw does Bob Dylan's 115th Dream. So I wanted to do a joke about the fact that he's been tweeting like a crazy man. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And also, when you make instrumental music, you get really creative with song titles. And I
Yeah,
had
you
a
have some.
song. I have a little bit of a sense of humor. So, like the closing song on Wave 6 is called "Lick My Pumps, Love," and that's kind of inspired by the Spinal Tap "Lick My Love Pump." But it's also in the key of D minor, so the saddest of all keys. And I've already got some songs that I'm putting together for Wave 7, and there's some very interesting song titles there too. So And what's another thing is I get inspired by the people I work with. So it's like, when I'm making so much music, I'm constantly in a mode. Like that's one of the great things about being a record producer is that it's impossible for me not to be inspired because I have to be inspired to work with people. You know, I can't just be a sad sap in the corner of the room going, okay, I guess that's okay. I got to be inspired to say, no, you should do that again, or hey, you should rewrite this song, or hey, you should, let's come up with some better way of singing this or a better key or whatever. I got to be sharp. So my mind is pretty sharp these days, making so much music. So it's a
So,
good thing.
speaking of having to be inspired, are you t are like if someone calls you up out of the blue, are you taking like every session that comes your way, or are you being kind of
There,
picky about who you work with?
Well, there's only a few things that I've been able to that I've said no to recently. Obviously, it's got to be of quality. Obviously, it's got to be something that speaks to me. Um, and I know what my strengths and weaknesses are. Like I had somebody who wanted to do some death metal or something, and I'm just like, I would be cosplaying. I'm not the right guy for that.
So we could probably do a whole podcast about Todd, but I was wondering if you have um a Todd produced record that's not one of his own that is your favorite.
Claudia, can you throw me that, please? This is a very good segue. This is a very good segue. This right here is my favorite album of all time. War Babies by Hall and Oates, Daryl Hall and John Oates. Um, and Todd produced it. And according to the label, Todd screwed up. According to the label, Daryl screwed up. John screwed up. Everybody screwed up because this right here is a psychedelic acid rock masterpiece. And the problem is this album came directly after Abandoned Luncheonette, which was their breakthrough album. So they went from She's Gone to making an album that sounds like a cross between Utopia, Bowie, Lou Reed. It's dark, it's sad, and it's very New York. It's very grimy music, and it's a record that's got a little bit of a cult following because it is spectacular. I mean, it is an album that just anybody who hears it gets blown away, especially knowing what Hall and Oates became. And the story is actually great. Hall and Oates actually opened up for David Bowie on the Ziggy Stardust tour,
Oh, really?
certain dates, and they found themselves this acoustic folk, like Seals and Crofts type duo, and they saw David Bowie as this futuristic alien, and Daryl Hall said, "I want to be David Bowie." Well, I actually think that David Bowie heard She's Gone and heard, Fall in
Yeah.
Philadelphia and said, maybe I should go to Philadelphia and make a Blue Eyed Soul record. Well,
Yeah.
Young Americans did way better than War Babies. War Babies was such a failure that they got dropped off of Atlantic Records. So this is the last record they put out on Atlantic. Tommy Mottola, their manager, said, "If you guys screw up this bad, I'm out, and you guys are never going to work again." So the next record they made, the Silver Album, aka Daryl Hall and John Oates, that actually was a complete success. That album had Sarah Smile, and the rest is history. Um, well, they're lucky that they actually got that chance because a lot of bands got dropped and nothing ever happened. So, it's kind of a crazy situation. But one of the things I do is I make tribute albums. And having trouble finding a copy, but I did a tribute album to War Babies this year called Babies of War Babies, a tribute to Gerald Hall and John Oates and the production of Todd Rundgren. And that record is the entire album done cover to cover with some incredibly cool people on it, actually. Rachel Flowers, John Pohida, um, the original, actually, two original guys on the record. Well, actually, one original guy on the record, John Siegler, the bass player for Utopia. Current members of Daryl's band, Brian Dunn and Charlie DeShant, are on it. And it came out really cool. I mean, it got great reviews, and it's out there right now on a label called Think Like a Key. And I think I sent out all my promo copies. So Can't hold
That's
it
cool. I'll
up.
have to look for that.
No, no, it's cool. And the thing about Todd's production is it isn't perfect. I mean, this record is a textbook example of Todd's ups and downs. So he got incredible performances out of Daryl and John, but snare's really hot. The production is very sometimes awkward. And it's really cool. There's lots of phaser, lots of Eventide stuff going on. And then it's also Todd's slide guitar masterpiece. And I actually asked Todd about this because he plays more slide on this record than any other record. And I said, Todd, why'd you stop playing slide? And he said, I lost my slide. And I'm like, okay, that's the most bullshit answer I've ever heard ever. He said, no. He says, I had a slide that I made off a pinch roller from an ancient IBM computer that he found that he dismantled and tried to build again. And he used the pinch roller as a slide. And he says he lost that slide, and that's when he stopped playing slide.
That's
Sorry, dude. You stop playing guitar when you lose your hand or you lose a finger. You still got a finger to put a slide on. Get a freaking slide on there, man. But
yeah, that's
that's
good.
the thing is that's how quirky Todd is. That's the thing that people love about Todd is that he's not your average producer. He's the type of guy that will tell Andy Partridge to step out of the booth and let him sing his song the way it should be sung. There's some crazy stories in Paul Meyer's book. Dream Goes On Forever, or sorry, Wizard of True Star, in the studio, and it's like that book has got some stuff that just made me go crazy. And then, uh, I recently had a really interesting conversation about Todd with what was his name? Oh God, guitar player for Queens of the Stone Age, who was in a band called What Is This? Oh, what's his
Troy,
name?
Troy Van Leeuwen,
No, the other guy.
the singer,
uh, yeah, hold on.
Josh Homme.
Nope.
Uh, let's see.
Oh, there it is.
Michael Schumann,
No, 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 no,
Dean
no, no.
Fertitta,
Alan Johannes.
the last one. Yeah.
Alan Johannes. So I have a Todd Rundgren shirt that I wear every once in a while. It says "Listen to Todd Rundgren," and he saw that shirt and he says, "Todd almost killed me." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he said that his band, What Is This, um, got signed to Warner, and they gave him a list of producers, and they chose Todd Rundgren, and they went to go make a record with Todd. And he says it didn't go that well, and they it was so awkward that they all got drunk and to blow off steam they started recording a cover of the song by the Spinners, I'll Be Around, and Todd pressed record, and when the label said, do you have anything to show, he showed them that, and that ended up becoming their single. And they had some type of weird altercation where Alan ended up throwing a Neumann microphone at Todd.
Wow. Yeah,
But
there's so many different like accounts of Todd in the studio. Like some people have great experiences and like we'll call him a genius, and others say that he basically just like reads the paper or doesn't even stick around.
well, aren't our favorite producers quirky? I mean, nobody could be quirkier than Phil Spector, or Joe Meek, At least he didn't murder anybody. But
Yeah.
Todd is Todd, and that's the thing is that when that's one of the fun things about Todd Productions is to see how different these bands sounded when Todd was at the helm. Listen to the difference between the band's Brown album and Stage Fright. Listen to the difference between Straight Up and Day After Day. Freaking no, Badfinger. Straight Up and what's the other one? Oh crap!
No
See,
dice.
No Dice, and Straight Up. Look at the difference between every other Rick Derringer album and Guitars and Women. The difference between Cheap Trick's albums and Next Position Please. It's really interesting to see Todd's stamp,
Yeah.
on these artists. And he's a fascinating producer because he doesn't do everything right. He doesn't have a signature, cleanness to it. There's lots of chances being taken and a lot of bizarre decisions, but I love it, I love what he does. And Todd has a signature to me. There's a certain way that he treats drums. That's one of the things that bums me out about Todd is that he's such a drum machine stan now. And it's
Yeah.
like I used to love his drum sounds. I used to love his direct guitar sound, his bizarre choices of effects on vocals, a lot of Eventide stuff, which he was obsessed with. And just a lot of creativity. It's great to see artists be so creative under Todd's auspices. It's wild. I love it. It's so great. And this Hall and Oates record, I mean, man, from note one, it's like it's really like no other Hall and Oates record, and it gets really crazy. I mean, there's a song on there called "Screaming Through December" that goes into this crazy 7/8 prog section, and then next thing you know, Daryl Hall's voice is slowed down, sounding like Frank Zappa, doing a bizarre, poetry, and the lyrics are insane on that record. Faustus ate glass for an appetizer and then bled all over a synthesizer. That's definitely not "You Make My Dreams Come True.
Yeah.
Again, you know, uh, you know,
So
it's
you've met Todd a few times over the
yeah.
years,
Todd
and
has been a very influential person in my life, and just an absolutely wonderful guy. We've had dinner like, plenty of times, and I got to work with him because I won a remix competition for his song called Kaleidoscope. And I basically did it wrong, very Todd-like. And what I did is instead of remixing it, I turned a dance song into a rock song. And since the crowd voted for it, that definitely was a
a
winning
smart move.
decision.
Yeah.
A very smart move. I actually had Eddie Zine, former drummer for Hall and Oates, drum on it. I played all the bass and guitars. It's got a guitar solo. It's a rocking track, actually. I think Todd has a lot of great songs on these dance records he puts out. There's no doubt that he's still the genius he was. He's just at a different point in his life. And he invited us out to his 75th birthday Toddstock in Hawaii and had an amazing time there. It's where I met my girlfriend,
Oh
and,
well.
and we had an incredible time. And here's another thing about Todd is that, he's just one of us, and he's so nice to everyone and just, he had people camping on his property. And that's amazing because Todd, this is he was a genuine bona fide rock star.
Yep.
And now he's just, this normal guy who opens up his world into, he's very transparent.
So what do you think about Daryl's singing, borrowing? Do you think they just sing so
Oh,
similarly because they're both
similar
from
DNA.
Philly,
You
or
know,
do you
you know
think
what? There's something to this. They both grew up in Philadelphia, listened to the same radio stations, drank the same water, and they have a lot of similar influences. A lot of that Philly soul stuff, a lot of that Delphonics, all that stuff, OJ's, and the thing that makes Todd and Daryl really interesting is that they are rock singers with soul DNA.
yeah,
And, Todd mentioned that this was a major turning point in his singing career, was working with Daryl. And, he got a little jealous and he was like, I could top this. So if you notice Todd's career arc, this is 74. And immediately after that, he's doing, freaking Faithful and Initiation and, Fair Warning, The Verb to Love. And that's all. I hear a lot of Daryl in that vocal style. And, a lot of it was him. Um, you know, this goes back to me. A big influence on me is the people I've worked with, being inspired by working with other musicians and songwriters. You know, being around inspired people is going to make you inspired. I'm not one of those people that gets intimidated and burned out around motivated people. And I'm sure that it definitely helped Todd be inspired to be around such legends like, Rick Derringer, Edgar Winter, Hall and Oates, um, all the musicians they worked with on Bat Out of Hell, um, Bette Midler's crew, Boogie Klingman, working on songs of the New Depression, all these incredible musicians that Todd was around. I mean, you know, how could you not be inspired one of the greatest bands of all time, Utopia, and everybody was just amazing in that band. Every lineup, going back to Mark II with Moogie and Ralph Schuckett, who I've worked with, and Ralph was amazing. And, I miss those guys. Moogie was a very famous connector of people in New York. Actually, Moogie's a big influence on me because, man, if I had $1 for every person I got a gig to, like I handed a gig to, because I'm always thinking of ways to help my friends get work, and that was Moogie's thing. I mean, Moogie was like totally the guy that would hook you up with the next thing. And all the great drummers he worked with, John Siamos and Kevin Elman and Willie Wilcox, and, you know, bass players, John Siegler, and all these bizarre people in his life, M Frog, and he's always had great musicians around him, and then finding Chasm, and this is a classic move. You know that Roger Powell came into Todd's world because Roger was the the synth demonstrator for ARP.
I think I didn't read that before. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how Todd discovered him, as he was going around the music stores and studios demonstrating synthesizers, and it's like, uh, you want to be in a band?
Yeah. You never know where the gig's gonna come from, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the things that I love about reading about music biographies is a lot of it is being at the right place at the right time and asking the right question
Right. Yeah.
or answering the right question.
So I feel like I keep bouncing around from Todd back to like your
That's
studio
okay.
and stuff going
Todd
on,
is a
but
Todd is my life template, man. You
so
know, I think I would be a way more curmudgeon person if I didn't realize that the music that I make for myself is for myself, and that it doesn't have to be successful because I get to make other music that's more successful, or music that's more pop. Because you know what? That's one of the things about Todd is that he made millions of dollars with Meatloaf, which he put into his video production. You know,
yeah.
building a multi-million-dollar video production studio that became obsolete in 2 years. But that's just Todd. You know, but that's the thing is that I enjoy making music on my own terms because I'm making other people's music on their terms. So I feel complete, you know. And I'm 44. I'm no spring chicken, but I'm not necessarily I still have projects that are, achieving radio airplay and stuff like that. But really I don't see myself becoming a rock star anytime soon. I'm not gonna be on some teenager's wall in a poster, and I don't mind because honestly, one of my favorite quotes is make music for yourself. If anybody else likes it, it's a side effect, you know.
Yes.
And
So what
that's
do
the
you
thing is I've never been a person that's been like, okay, well, dubstep's in, so I got to rearrange all my music and oh well, now trap beats. Now, you know what, man? My production ethos is what works works, and be creative in other ways.
yeah, I think
Don't reinvent the wheel, but just make great music.
I think that I haven't heard even a fraction of everything you've done, but from what I have heard and what I see on social media and your Instagram and listening to your records, I think you have a brand so that the people that are hiring you for that sound and for that thing
Oh
that
yeah.
you do.
Oh yeah, and I'm not the best musician. I'm not the fastest guitar player. I'm not the best, I'm not the most hit producer. But you know what? The people get results they want, and I think one of the things that is one of my um, biggest virtues is I'm a songwriter and I'm a music lover, and the song is number one. Not every song needs a big wailing guitar solo. Not every song needs, you know, every trick in the book. Some songs work fine with just an acoustic guitar. There's a new single that just came out by a guy named Jim Camacho I produce. I did a record with Greg Bissonette and him. And the new song is called One Glorious Day. And he was just texting me this morning and asking me what instruments I used and what I should be credited. And I didn't play guitar on the song. I played Mellotron. I played nothing but Mellotron on the song. And it's just Mellotron, acoustic guitar, and vocal. Didn't need drums, didn't need anything else. There's certain songs that need to breathe. Um, Fief Mooney, who I'm working with now, um, or the first record I did with her was a typical pop production. And then the next record we did was more, we were inspired by John Martin. We wanted to make a record that sounded like Solid Air. So it's, fretless bass, guitar, very light percussion, dreamy keyboards. And now the new record we're doing, I was like, okay, maybe we'll do drums without cymbals. Maybe it'll be nothing will get in the way of the higher level of her voice because she's got this beautiful Joni Mitchell, Ricky Lee Jones vibe going on the top. And like, there's an artist that I'm going to be working with from England named Jessie Muriel, and she's a man, wow, she's a powerhouse. And really, it doesn't need full production. I mean, the piano and the vocal really hold it down. And there's something to here's what I want to say is the best songs still work when it's just an acoustic guitar and a vocal or a piano and a vocal.
Yes.
If the production is the make or break of the song, it's not a great song. It's a gimmick. It's a vibe. It's a beat. As you know, it's a thing. And I love going to singer songwriter nights. Every chance I get, we go to place that's Tarzana Music Night or Kulak's Woodshed out here or other acoustic singer songwriter nights because that's the best is to see someone. And I just worked with an artist and discovered them, and I just worked with a great band called Great Willow, and it's a guitarist, a cellist, and they both sing.
Oh, cool.
And I said, I want to record this, and they're like, well, what do you have in mind? I'm like, four mics. I want to capture this. I want to Alan Lomax this, and that's what we did. Set them up in my room and recorded live because I wanted to bottle that. And some of their old recordings, it's like, it gets kind of choked when there's drums and backup vocals and percussion and keyboards and stuff that isn't represented live because I felt like those two people were making enough of a noise to capture my attention for 45 minutes. You know, Pink Moon by Nick Drake is just as effective as Five Leaves Left and Brighter Later. You know, perfect example. The White Album. There's extremely layered stuff, but Blackbird and Julia and Mother Nature's Son just as effective to me. You
How
know.
how's your instinct for that? Probably pretty honed in by now, or do you
Oh
find
yeah.
yourself
Oh
like
yeah. 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 Yeah.
chasing
Yeah.
sounds and
You
deciding
know
to
what's
die?
funny? The most of the fights I get into with people are is when I'm underproducing according to their minds, and a lot of it is you know, my old school nature. Like I've got a client that I won't mention that he'll do a guitar solo and he'll nail it in the first take, and I'll be like, "You're done." And he says, "No, man, that's not fair. Let me do more." 30 takes later, he's throwing his guitar at the wall. And
Yeah.
you know what? There's a certain beauty to committing, you know.
Yeah.
And I've just put one mic in front of people and gotten beautiful sound. You don't need a London Symphony Orchestra and a choir. Sometimes it's perfectly fine to be a trio or, have sprinkles. Because you know what? I consider production like baking a cake. The cake's the important thing. Everything else is icing. And it's like, if the cake isn't there, it's just fluff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I really believe that a song is only as good as its basic parts. And I love it. I love it. I love the variety because I love maximalism too. You know, with the music that I'm listening to now, I'm loving stuff that's extremely layered, like Improvement Movement, and
Oh
uh,
yeah. Cool.
and then I'm also loving stuff that's like Jesse Wells, guy in the field playing acoustic guitar and saying the truth. That's the beautiful thing about music these days. And there's some crazy maximalist stuff, Nowhere and Fievel is Glock and what's his name? Daryl Johns and stuff like that, all that jazz stuff, which is
Yeah.
blowing my mind. But I'm just as inspired to hear Jesse Muriel playing piano and singing, you know?
it's interesting. I've never heard you throw out like such contemporary names before. Normally I hear you, talking about classic prog and classic rock stuff, but
I recently had a gig writing for Rockseller magazine doing emerging artist stuff. And
awesome.
I think everything changed. Well, no, you know what? Everything didn't change because I've always liked modern artists. When I was in high school, I was really into Ben Folds, Tori Amos, and Cardigans and stuff like that. And then, I've always had, artists that I've been blown away from that are current. And then lately, there's a lot of stuff that is one foot in vintage. For example, Lemon Twigs.
Right, yeah.
That universe is incredible. And I actually just produced a record for their keyboard player, bass player, Danny Ayala,
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I
Dr.
saw that he
Danny.
was in there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, amazing. That record was great. And we did it on tape, which is really cool.
Cool.
But that world is great. I'm also really into a band called Parcels out of Australia. Really cool dancey pop. Uh, and they're kind of a mix of three different genres that I love right now. I hear a lot of Tame Impala, so there's a lot of that modern psychedelic desert rock craziness. And then I'm really into Wolfpack. I'm really into that funk world.
Cool.
Pomplamoose, Wolfpack, Knower, Snarky Puppy, Fearless Flyers, that whole world. And it's like I feel like that band is kind of mixed that funky world, Tame Impala, classic songwriting, and Bee Gees and a little bit of Daft Punk. They have a little bit of a DJ aspect to them, but that goes back to me discovering bands like Soulwax, and freaking out about them, and a lot of bands that I loved in the 2000s and the 2010s that are still making great music. Wilco, Sky Blue Sky, I mean, I'm not necessarily, a lot of people think I'm an old fogey that just listens to classic rock. Just because I'm not into top 40 music doesn't mean I don't like not modern music. Doesn't mean I'm not freaking out over, uh, indie bands, just bands that I discover just from scrolling. I've found a lot of great music just from the algorithm. You
Yeah.
know, Improvement Movement landed on my lap just because I found a post about it, and I just couldn't believe that these guys are. I called them Crosby, Stills, Nash and Yes, because they're prog fans, but
Yeah.
they also have that Americana ethos, and it's just, ugh, that album Slump is insane, and I can't wait to hear. They have two records they're making now, and I can't wait
Cool.
to see them live in July out here in LA. And there's a lot of great music out there. I mean, man, there's a lot of really awesome, unique stuff happening right now in music because, again, it's never been easier to make a record
Yeah.
and a lot of collaboration. And you know what's okay? This is a big point I want to make. Um, Recently, there's been a little bit of a big um, controversy about Instagram musicians faking stuff like Giacomo Tura and stuff like
Yeah.
that, where people are lip syncing or speeding up tracks and making it. What I love is that there's this new ethos now. It's kind of inspired by NPR Tiny Desk, which kind of goes back to Unplugged, which when I was in high school, Unplugged was the
Yeah.
best thing in the world. And now it's like I'm seeing bands like Improvement Music Movement, a band from Quebec that's called Men I Trust, doing these videos where they're performing live and it's unfiltered, it's unproduced. It's a band actually performing live. Because, man, there was a recent situation where Carol G, a big reggaeton artist, fell down a large staircase on stage and her vocal track kept on going.
Mm.
You know, Nothing, I'm sure she's talented, but, the world needs less of that and needs more of Jesse Wells playing into an iPhone.
Yeah.
Needs more of like unprocessed, unfiltered, no makeup type artists that are real deal. Because I just watched a documentary about the zombies. Freaking She's Not There is recorded live in the studio, one take. The Animals, Heart of the, freaking House of the Rising Sun, one take. You know, there's not a lot of artists these days that could go in a studio, record as a band with vocals and sound great. And I think that's really the litmus test is that to have these artists have these recordings that are so cool Sure, they might have done more than one take. There might have been some fixing, but really, it's proof that they're great artists. Because man, I've seen video of one camera video of Improvement Movement, and their vocals are just out of this world. You
Yeah.
know, bands like Parcels that have four-part harmony that are just absolutely insane. You know, God, the amazing layering of Men I Trust. I mean, that's a band that's again another band that's like a mix of so many different things. I hear the Cardigans, I hear the Sundays, I hear trip hop, you know. Um, and these are all great bands. I mean, there's so many great stuff, so much great stuff out there. It's just ready for the taking. And it's I'm glad that I'm seeing these bands blow up. The same way I saw Tame Impala blow up. When I first saw Tame Impala, they released Lonerism. They played the El Rey, which is I think 1,000 people capacity here in LA. And next thing you know, they're playing the Greek and Hollywood Bowl. Um, Wolfpack, selling out Madison Square Garden, selling out Red Rocks. Parcels selling out Red Rocks. They're selling out. They played Coachella and they blew up, and now they're playing the Forum in October. Men I Trust is playing the Greek Theater in October, in August.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love seeing bands make it the old-fashioned way,
Yes. And
without a machine, without a label.
yeah.
If you go to Men I Trust website, it says labels do not contact us.
Yeah, that's cool. They just put out two, right?
Yeah, yeah, and they're great records.
Yeah.
They're great. One of them is for dancing, one of them is for sobbing.
Yeah. Um,
Isn't that life?
I guess when you're done at the studio, it seems like you're listening to music the rest of the night.
Well, I do a lot of I don't have TV set. I watch a lot of YouTube. I subscribe to people and watch the content. I check out a lot of Instagram, not so much TikTok, but I do a lot of music discovery. Man, it's great that I'm still discovering artists from the '70s. My latest discovery is a guy called John Miles, who had a hit called Music, produced by Alan Parsons. This guy was hot as shit in London and England in the '70s, but he didn't really make it to the States. And he put out like five incredible prog pop records in the '70s. And he's like he's like he was a big deal in England, but he didn't make it out here. Sang on a couple of Alan Parsons songs and played guitar for Joe Cocker and Tina Turner, but died kind of in 2021 kind of anonymous. And I'm discovering his records.
Yeah, that
76's Rebel is insane, and I'm now checking out Zaragon, which is his prog album, so it's cool.
it's yeah, it's it seems like every year or two there's like another artist from the 70s that like people
Oh yeah,
find.
the
It's like
Rodriguez effect.
how are
You know?
like when are we gonna run out of these? They're just endless. And it's
Yeah,
awesome.
but
It's great.
that's the thing about music is that the record industry has always been a big crock sometimes, and some people that should have been promoted weren't promoted. Some records that should have been promoted weren't promoted. Some bands that deserved better were not given the amount of machine that other bands got, and that's when you discover that there's so much music to be discovered. The world lost Terry Draper of Klaatu this week, and I played on his last four records, and that's a band that just put out. I had a perfect discography. I mean, every Klaatu record is insane, and they were so good that people thought they were the Beatles. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a well-known name. The Carpenters did calling occupants of planetary craft, but that wasn't enough. Um, Lots of bands that I just idolize that are that didn't really cross over. Curved Air, Caravan. Oh God, Caravan.
But
So
yeah, but I
good.
mean you're carrying the torch for all of that now, and I think maybe, hopefully some people are finding that
Oh,
stuff
well, I'm
through
glad
you.
I'm turned on people to music.
Yeah.
I'm always playing stuff for people and going, God, you got to check this out. And not everything sticks. Part of being a Todd Rundgren fan is knowing that you're going to fail most of the time you try to get somebody into Todd Rundgren.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
it's not the easy pill to swallow.
Although I feel like most people there's a Todd Rundgren record that will work for them. You just have to figure out which one it is.
Exactly. And there's so many hurdles to go over because he wins you over and he might lose you in one song. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's
No,
the beautiful thing about music. And actually, I've been having this conversation with somebody. You know, records used to be interesting, and a lot of like I had this one artist. It's like, oh well, I don't know if this song fits. I don't know if this fits the genre. And I'm like, do you think being for the benefit of Mr. Kite worked, think about all the freaking curveballs the Beatles did. If they thought that way, they probably wouldn't have put Eleanor Rigby on Revolver. There's so many yin yang moments in Beatles records. You know, Eleanor Rigby and Tomorrow Never Knows. You know, Julia and Revolution Number Nine. Maxwell Silverhammer and I Want You, She's So Heavy. Octopus Garden. It's like, man, the Beatles, they took chances. And that's something that it used to be rewarded is bands taking chances. And now you have bands just releasing the same crap every year. Sorry. I mean, I like to give everybody a chance, but when people are playing it way too safe, it gets boring.
I think it I think a lot of what makes a record feel cohesive isn't so much the songs and the arrangements. It's the place and like the sounds that you're getting. If you're using the same kit across the whole record, I think no matter what you're doing, it's gonna feel like it belongs. But
Yeah,
it's when you start recording in studios all over the country with different producers and different writers, and that's when you get these records that don't work. But I agree with you. I think, you know, if you've got a sound, then just go nuts. Do whatever you want.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Obviously, running a studio and like having clients coming in is a hustle, and you have to like always like that's a business into itself. But then you have the business of being an artist and like do you think of the studio as basically supporting your artist career or
Absolutely. It's the means to an end. I mean, the same way that I could wake up every day and make music, it also provides the funds to make the music and to live. But also, as I said, it's like, every artist comes in inspired and inspiration is catchy. Inspiration is very, it definitely catches on and makes me happy, to see these people come in inspired and with new songs. And every day is a new song. Every day my ears get treated to new songs, whether I find it or whether it's brought to me. And that's a great thing. Honestly, it's the best thing in the world.
we didn't talk very much about your guitar playing actually, which is kind of funny because that's maybe the primary thing a lot of people think of you as.
I could take care of my guitar playing in 1 minute. I play to the song, I play melodically, and my favorite guitar players just are epic. Are just they're just epic, and they leave a mark. And you hear them, and you know that's them. So whether it's Neil Young, playing one note and hitting you in the soul, Todd Rundgren always figuring out the right parts to come up with, Jason Faulkner being the weirdo on these great pop records. Same thing goes with John Bryan. Early influences like Carlos Santana. Um, I love Robert Fripp, Steve Howe, Peter Banks, Steve Hackett. Um, recently did a tribute to the band Camel. So Andy Latimer is a big influence, and I love melodies. When I go to play a solo, I don't think of modes and scales and pentatonic scale, and I rarely ever play the blues. I can play the blues, but my favorite guitar solo of all time is "Maybe I'm Amazed."
Hmm.
And I remember I had a discussion with a guitar player who said that's not a guitar solo, that's a guitar melody. And I said, no, it's a solo, it's a feature. And he's like, yeah, but that was a written part. I'm like, sometimes it's better if it's a written part. You know, I'm down with improvisation. I love jazz. I love fusion. I love Mahavishnu. I love John McLaughlin. I love Al Di Meola. I love, John Ponty. But, to me, when you sing the solo of something, you know, being able to sing that solo, being able to sing the solo of Down on Main Street by Bob Seger, Pete Carr, I love that stuff, you know. I love guitar players that sing with their guitar. I'll leave it at this. Um, my friend Scott, who was with Scott Bennett, who was with Brian Wilson, he was playing keyboards with Brian on the tour where Jeff Beck opened. And one day he went up to Jeff and he says, Jeff, I love that you sing with your guitar. And he says, I actually could hear the voice of Jeff Buckley when you play the guitar. And he immediately gave him a hug and said, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Because you know what? When I play the guitar on my Waves records, I have to take the part of the vocalist.
Yeah, yeah.
And if the guitar ain't singing, it ain't music.
So let me
If it's
ask you
just making
this.
noise,
As a guitar player myself, if you're not thinking in scales and you're not thinking in modes, then you have to have some ability to audio. You have to have a trained enough ear to know what's going to come out of it, right?
look, man, I love chord progressions and I love something called juice notes. And I know the notes that could make the chord sing. So, you know, it's just a lot of his muscle memory. A lot
Hmm.
of it is also learning these songs when I was a kid and going, this is what makes the guitar sing, you know? And what I really enjoy is major to minor movement, major seventh chords, major ninth chords, minor seventh chords, all the chords that are popular in all the Todd chords, all the bass substitution. And really, truly, what I love is beautiful music and music that speaks to the soul.
Are you hearing it in your head though before it comes out? Do you
Yeah,
know you do?
yeah. I got melodies coming out of me every day. But a lot of it is also tactile, When I write the wave songs, I usually start on guitar and I'll come up with a part and I'll start laying it down. And here's another thing. Living in a recording studio, there's no such thing as a demo. So
Yeah.
I actually discourage demos because demoitis is a terrible thing. So, I record scratch vocals on a Neumann microphone. I record guitar parts through an amp, even if it's a demo. I do things right because my entire career came from a demo I did 2002. I was 21 years old and I went in to record guitar tracks for for a songwriter in Miami, named Nicholas Tovar, who was writing songs for Latin artists. And I played on 5 songs in a day. He paid me $50 a song. And one of the songs called No Se Falta was sent over to a guy named Christian Castro, and he loved it, but he loved the guitar playing. And since I brought an amp and recorded it the right way on the demo, they just pulled the guitar track off the Pro Tools and built the whole song around it. When it
Okay.
went to number one, I got brought in and played on the rest of the record. And next thing you know, I'm on tour, 22 years old, playing in front of 60,000 people in Chile. And it all came from that $50 demo.
Wow.
Because you know what, man? You never know what's going to end up being the take. The other day, I had some people over and I was like, "Hey, this could be it." And they're like, "No, we're just jamming." I'm like, "This could be it." You know,
Yeah.
you might as well preserve it because there's a little Alan Lomax in everybody who records. Alan Lomax went around recording all the blues guys before they croaked. You know, I like to preserve music. You know, I like to
Cool.
preserve it. And look, you know, I've had records that have made zero, zero that still brought me joy. And I've had made records that have done great. That brings me joy too. But still,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, there's two bank accounts. There's the one in your heart and the one in your pocket. As long as the one in your heart's full, you're good. Because you know what? There's lots of people that played the game and made cookie cutter music, made millions of dollars. Next thing you know, they're drug addicts or worse.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, I am truly happy. You know, shopping around for a $2,000 car, but I'm very happy right now because man, the music I make is some of the best music I've ever made. And it all comes from being around music 24/7, feeding off of other people's inspiration. and enjoying the process with people and collaborating and collaborating. I love collaboration. I love making music, whether it's for myself or for others. And I don't have an ego when it comes to my production. Sometimes I'm not even playing guitar on tracks. Doesn't matter. I enjoy it. I enjoy being in the room with musicians. I enjoy talking about music. I know you do. You have a podcast.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, man, the more music is spoken of and discovered and made, the better the world will be. Because the minute people stop making music, the world isn't going to be worth living in.
Well, that's a mission statement for everything, for this channel, for the music you make, and yeah. So
Thanks, Jason. What a pleasure.